Astragar presents Risk Tales. Conversations on how vulnerabilities, threats, cyber resilience, governance, regulation, and risk quantification are evolving in an age of AI, digital transformation, and systemic exposure. Featuring leaders from insurance, banks and financial institutions, enterprise risk, capital markets, technology, and public policy. This is Risk Tales.
Hello, everybody, and a very, very warm welcome to this very exciting episode today. In this special edition, we bring you insights from the GV Rao Memorial Lecture held on the 4th of February 2026 in Mumbai, India. A seminal gathering of industry leaders, innovators, and thought leaders exploring the impact of artificial intelligence on the insurance sector, named in honor of the legendary Indian insurance stalwart, GV Rao. This lecture continues a proud tradition of fostering professional excellence and forward-thinking dialogue in insurance and risk management. This year's conversation went far beyond the buzzwords, delving into how AI is reshaping underwriting, claims processing, fraud detection, customer experience, and operational efficiency across the insurance ecosystem. From practical use cases and real-world applications to strategic opportunities and challenges, the event spotlighted how insurers are leveraging cutting-edge technologies to stay competitive and what the future might hold in an increasingly digital, data-driven world. Whether you're an industry veteran or simply about where AI meets risk and protection, we'll unpack the key ideas today and takeaways from one of the most important discussions in the sector today. I am very, very pleased to have with me Mr. David Piesse. Mr. Piesse is a global insurance evangelist, chief risk officer, insurtech pioneer, and risk management specialist who is in a 40-year career has combined insurance practices with information technology. He is on the research board of the International Insurance Society in New York and on the organizing committee of their global insurance conferences. He has 30 years of experience in the Asia markets and is advisor to an Asian family office on technology investments and innovation venture funds. He has extensive first-hand experience in stochastic modeling of regulatory capital solvency analytical models and integration of catastrophe models. Currently, he is the insurance lead for Vulcan AI, one of the first established causal AI companies for predictive analytics. David, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you doing?
Thank you very much. Wonderful to be here. Thank you very much.
David, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. I know it's late for you in India. Thank you so much for taking the time out and, joining me on this very, very interesting and exciting conversation. So you were in India to deliver the GV Rao Memorial Lecture at the Insurance Institute of India. So I'm very curious to know first, what messages were you most keen to leave the audience with? And from your interactions at the Institute around the lecture, what struck the most about the questions the Indian insurance leaders are currently grappling with? If you can just share some light on that.
Yes, so I have a long history with the Indian Insurance Institute. Goes back about 25 years. And so we've always been discussing, leading edge technologies and what could happen. And I was very honored to be invited this year to speak. It's usually in December, but they couldn't find a speaker to talk about the subjects they wanted in December. So they changed it to February, and they asked me, and I went along. I think the key messages there is, first of all, they want to know about AI and the impact of AI on the insurance industry in India, right? And when we talked about, AI, It's something that all the leaders want to hear about. But at the same time, we brought in the cybersecurity issue because, you can't have AI digitization like India is fully digitized now, which is amazing over the years, without thinking about the cyber risk. So the messages we brought forward was AI, cybersecurity, and after my talk, we had a panel that discussed the issues in India. That's what happened.
It sounds like a very interesting conversation that you must have had. So, from the global vantage point, how do you see the cybersecurity threat landscape evolving? I mean, in terms of what patterns do you expect fast digitizing markets like India to encounter, particularly in how cyber risks are identified and prioritized?
Yeah, right. So I first got involved in cybersecurity in 2007 in Estonia. There was a cyber attack on Estonia, the first state-sponsored cyber attack in history, where Estonia country was closed down, and they brought out technology to actually counteract why they lost all their data. So what I discussed in India was, which I think is common across many countries, is the data integrity leg of the cybersecurity triangle that is put forward internationally. It started in the US, but you have availability of cyber into your networks, and then you have confidentiality, which is encryption, and then you have this thing called data integrity, where you protect pieces of data and alert you if they're tampered with. And that data integrity has been missing in everywhere, and India is no exception. And so one of the things I talked about was how do we protect pieces of data from tampering? And unfortunately, many boards of directors have ignored this over time, and that's why many of the cyber attacks and the data breaches, especially increasing in India, are caused by the lack of data integrity. So we need to look at that vulnerability. And I talk to this in the context of AI because AI has opened a completely new landscape of attack surface, and where data integrity becomes mandatory. And so it's data integrity is the theme, right? And that vulnerability.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much for that very insightful piece of information. So is the shift that you're seeing globally more about increasing sophistication or about the growing volume and interconnectedness of attacks? How does that affect an organization's ability to make timely, confident decisions, do you think?
Well, yeah. So in the interconnectivity is the reason, right? Let's take an example. I mean, the most important thing for countries, and this was the thing I discussed in India, is critical infrastructure, right? So critical infrastructure is the utilities, the telecommunications, the defense, that kind of thing. And if we take the ports, right? So let's look at maritime and the ports in the world, right? Those ports are so crucial, which is a global issue, to every country. So if a port was hacked, then it would delay the shipping coming in, and everything will be closed down, and all of a sudden there's no food on the shelves. So this has been caused by what you say, interconnectivity, because before COVID, most ports around the world, we're talking any major country, every major city, Mumbai, Australia, US, doesn't matter where we're talking about, that all the ports were not fully digitized before COVID. During COVID, they all got digitized, and therefore they went from an idiosyncratic risk, which was just the risk in their own environment, to a systemic risk. And now that systemic risk and that connectivity of digitization across these ports is actually a great threat to way of life. So it's being underestimated, and it's not being looked at right now. So I think that this is an area we should look at, is critical infrastructure, and this is something I discussed in India very, very carefully with the people I met.
Absolutely. I'll come to the organizational blind spots right now and decision clarity. So, across the organization that you've worked with globally, where do cyber risks most often get misunderstood, especially when translating technical issues into business or operational impact?
I think the biggest problem is, as I alluded to just now, is the data integrity blind spot. People invest in their data security budget, they invest in availability of networks, they invest in confidentiality, and then you have the cloud, which inverts the concept, and the data becomes the perimeter. And so that when you're in the cloud, the data is the first thing to be attacked. So I think the blind spot has always been data integrity. But when I discussed, the concept of vulnerability scanning, the ability to bring out vulnerability using technology, this is a very nascent area in India, and I think it's a very nascent area everywhere. And I think the US cybersecurity companies like CrowdStrike are only just starting to realize that they need to do this vulnerability assessment, right? So when I discuss the vulnerability assessment of looking at what is your potential financial exposure to lead into cyber insurance, India told me they're in a very nascent stage. So although India is actually doing a lot of wonderful work in cybersecurity, they haven't started to look at this vulnerability scanning. And that's where I think, that the change should start happening, looking at data assets, that kind of thing. So data has been ignored by boards of directors over the years. Data is an asset. It's the same as stocks, shares, cash, and real estate. And if you don't look after it, if they lost all those things, they wouldn't have a company. So we need to put that data as an asset on the bill as well to the board of directors. And I think when I'm talking here to India, is the board of directors are suddenly starting to get interested in this. And that's the shift. You can't let the IT run. You can't let the IT run, although they're so valuable. We need IT people, but they don't know the value of data like the board. So there needs to be a coordination between the board and the IT, but the board needs to look after their data as an asset, and that's so important.
That's such a fascinating, the fascinating way of explaining. Thank you so much, David. A novice like me, this is really, really very exciting and very interesting. So I'll come to the next segment, which is the cyber insurance and systemic risk and underwriting realities. So from the global insurance perspective, is cyber insurance today functioning more as a compliance mechanism or as a meaningful risk management and underwriting decision tool, you think?
Well, risk management of cyber is a very important subject, and it involves regulation, which I guess you might talk to me about later. But I think that cyber should be in the same realm as catastrophe, like climate change. It's the biggest risk in the world, right? And just like other catastrophes ahead of the time, people need to address that risk management. But what's happened is the insurance industry right now is learning about cyber. It's taken them a long time, and to credit, they have covered a lot of the cyber issues. But what they haven't covered is the catastrophe issues, and these are the issues that we need to look at. These are zero-day attacks, which are attacks that happen on the internet that no one can detect, and all of a sudden there's a problem. Or there's accumulation risk, where everyone has the same, is across the same, third parties, like they use the same disk person, they use Amazon, they use Microsoft, and if all of those are hacked at the same time, there is a bankruptcy issue. So this is the area that the risk management needs to look at, is accumulation risk and new emerging risks. And maybe we shouldn't stop chasing an individual, risk like ransomware, go down that rabbit hole, or middleman attack, go in that ransomware. Maybe we should look at this as holistic, risk management, like we did with climate change and things like this. So I think there's a big change required in risk management and how to deal with this. And maybe the insurance industry, individual insurers are not the place to do this. Maybe it's the reinsurance world and the capital markets, like Zurich and just looking at taking over Beazley, as you see in the press. Beazley have done all of the catastrophe bonds on cyber in Lloyd's, and I think that's why Zurich are interested in Beazley. And we need to look at capital market solutions to solve this risk management issue. That's my view.
Thank you, David. So that is one aspect of the cyber risks.
Mm-hmm.
But consider systemic cyber risks such as nation state attacks or large scale infrastructure disruption. So there, do you think the traditional insurance models realistically scale to absorb those risks?
Well, when you get to nation state attacks, you get into the area like terrorism, right? So if you remember the 9/11 attacks and everything else, what was created then was a national treaty in America that called TRIA, right? So that if a cyber attack happened, the insurance industry will pick up the first 35 billion, for example, and then the government will be a backstop. And when it comes to nations attacks, maybe sometimes the government needs to take some kind of responsibility for that attack. So I think the insurance industry cannot take on an entire state nation attack, but they can add a backstop to a reinsurance tower where we offer different layers of reinsurance, and then at the bottom, after for example, if $35 billion had gone through that tower, then the government pick up the rest. So I think it's a private-public partnership is required, and I think that's what's necessary. There are some people in the insurance industry who think that this is uninsurable risk. I don't agree with that. So I think we need to put forward a proper reinsurance program, including the capital markets, that can deal with the systemic risk. So it's not about a single insurance cyber policy. It's about a combination of reinsurance, insurers, capital market, and government.
Right. So I'll come next to the regulation part, which is I think something very critical. So do you think that in today's world, the regulators globally struggle with cyber risk because it behaves fundamentally differently from traditional insurable risk?
I think regulators, first of all, I say they're a necessary organization, of course. They protect the policyholder and the customers. So that's their role. And I guess with the moving speed of technology, it's very difficult for regulators to keep up, maybe. And so, therefore, one has to, accept that regulators are a little behind because they need to understand. But in this modern era we're in, my opinion is that you can't have 20th century regulation for 21st century technology. So therefore, I think something called reg tech, right? Regulation technology needs to come in to regulators so we can align regulation more closely with what is happening. But I think regulatory speed will slow down the AI world. But when it comes to cyber, I think that the regulators should take a very serious interest in the technology companies that are producing like data integrity, vulnerability scanning. They should bring them into their risk-based capital enterprise risk management, go to the rating agencies, and that will bring them closer to what is going on and not being too far behind. Because you've got to be inside the ecosystem, not outside it. But that's my view. But I think that regulation is essential. and regulation of data is essential. And we have to support regulation, but we have to bring them closer, I think, to the ecosystem that we're living in.
So my next question to you is, you're in India right now. So as markets like India and countries like India mature, what regulatory principles do you think will matter most when addressing cyber risk, particularly around transparency, accountability, and defensibility of decisions?
I haven't been to India for 6 years, so it's great to be back here. I talked to all of the people at the conference. I've talked to people afterwards. I mean, we have, there's a strong ecosystem of Indian insurance companies, as Bajaj Allianz and AIG and ICI Lombard. They're all moving forwards on the cyber risk. But I believe that what I alluded to earlier, that they really need to get into the data and vulnerability scanning that we discussed early on. I think India's digitizing at such a rapid rate. I mean, now I think the whole country is nearly digitized, right? 1.2 billion people. And there are many, many startups. So I think India is at an inflection point of cyber. And that inflection point means there's got to be a lot of quick thinking, I think, now, especially with the AI coming in. And AI opens up a whole new attack surface. And that was the reason I was speaking here, was about AI. And then I got a lot of questions about what is AI, how AI is going to change the cyber landscape. And the answer is quite significantly.
Yeah, actually, my next question is about AI as a risk multiplier and the early warning. So, I'm going to ask you that, how do you think AI is changing the cyber risk landscape, not just as a defensive tool, but in how early warning signals are generated, interpreted, and acted upon?
So when pre AI, if you like, I mean, AI has been around for 70 years, but we have generative AI now, and that's based on prompting, right? So pre-prompting, we didn't have a big issue to the same degree about about hackers taking over our our whole email system, or our whole infrastructure. And so we just had to worry about network security, confidentiality, and data. But AI has opened a new attack surface, and that attack surface is basically around prompting, model training, data poisoning. I wrote a paper on this, which you can share with your listeners, but which I'm happy to release. But it's really about, we'll take an example. I've got a software agent right now. We have agentic AI, and I have a software agent. I'm a busy person, and I get 100 emails a day, and I ask my software agent to summarize all my emails and give me a summary at the end of the day. So it gets rid of all the emails that I would have to delete. It will give me a summary of everything I've got, and I have a great summary at the end of the day. Unfortunately, that prompt to my agent can be hijacked by a malicious actor who puts a white font on a white background. I can't see the white font, but the agent can, and it directs the agent into the malicious actor's arena. And all of a sudden, my whole email has been hacked and changed. So we have to look at these new risks, and it's all about data integrity, which is now mandatory in AI, and the poisoning of training models. So everything changes. So the whole AI arena has completely changed. The way that added a new cybersecurity attack surface that we need to look at. So we need to be scanning and vulnerabilities across AI as well as just the pre-AI world. So it's a very serious thing.
Absolutely. I don't think it gets more serious than this right now. Almost every country, every government, every regulator, that's all that they are talking about. So In your view, which is currently moving faster, David? Is it the AI enabled attacks or organizations' ability to govern, explain, and control AI driven decisions? This is a very interesting part.
Well, it's cat and mouse, isn't it? I mean, you have
Correct.
to, it's cybersecurity, you have to keep ahead of the, or try and keep ahead of the offenders. But with AI, of course, the offenders have got the same technology as the defenders. So I think it's very important to use new branches of AI in conjunction with cybersecurity techniques, and this is predictive analytics AI, and this is what I was talking about to the Insurance Institute, which is basically causal AI is finding the cause and effect of what is happening. We do it with climate change. We do it. We did it 50 years ago with space technology. Generative AI is new, but AI has been around a very long time. So what we have to look at is to try and get one step ahead of the attackers. And one thing we can do with what I call causal AI, which is predictive analytics, not generative AI, is to get down to the tin of the internet, which is TCP/IP, which is the network for the internet, and try to predict, if someone's broke the firewall, and we can see a 0-day attack, which right now no one can defend against, and we can produce some kind of index of that attack and benchmark it to show companies where a 0-day attack comes in. And that's where we really need to get down to the to cyber. And this is the area. And then once the insurance industry have that, we create an index, and then they can write parametric insurance against that. And all of a sudden we have a better solution. And that the big problem with cyber is the limits are too low. If you take a port, so they might be getting $65 billion a year revenue, and they got cyber protection of 30 million, which is a limit, which is very underwhelming for the size of this risk. So I think we need to use predictive analytics, causal AI, in conjunction with cybersecurity, vulnerability scanning, and other techniques in order to improve the limits and make the insurance industry more comfortable that they have a gold standard against this kind of attack.
Thank you so much, David, for that amazing insight. I just have one last question before we conclude tonight. So, based on your global experience, what advice would you give to countries like India, already among the world's most digitally advanced, as you said, yet fast growing economy, as they adopt AI and digital systems at scale, particularly to avoid being surprised by risks they thought they understood? Obviously, the perspective of risks have changed significantly, especially in the last few years. So, what would you say?
I think this is a constantly evolving risk, right? I mean, I think it will constantly evolve, and it evolves by sector, right? So I think we look at maritime, we look at construction, we look at all of these different important sectors. So what I've said to the Insurance Institute is basically that they should step up on to help the country of India, like other countries are doing, which is I think India is quite advanced in what they're doing with cybersecurity, but to get involved in this more, as I said earlier, to look at more data management side of thing. But the institute needs to help insurance industries in education. I mean, they give courses, right? Insurance Institute. So when I look at worldwide education courses for education and insurance, cyber is not in a lot of these courses. And, so education has to catch up. So I think it's up to, the people that give out the authority and regulation for people to underwrite, and they need to put more, they need to step up on this issue and make the education bigger. And then they need more input from people who understand this. But I think there's a great benchmark in the world from Estonia. I mean, it's a small country, but it was the first country to be, state attacked, and they created a cryptographic standard for data, and no one else adopted. Even though we took it around the world to show it, and the boards of directors never took it. But now, if I can, just tell you that a piece of data that is crucial to an organization, it could be underwriting for insurance industry, but it could be a crucial piece of data. If you don't know that it's been tampered with, you've lost your data. So what the Estonians did was put cryptographic situational awareness on a piece of data that was crucial to a company, right? So it's like a haystack. If you're looking for a needle in a haystack, you'll never find it. But if you take a piece of straw, which is equivalent to a piece of data, you put a situational awareness on that piece of hay, you will always be able to find that needle in the haystack. And that is what the best message to talk to people about is how to create that situational awareness of data that is crucial to your organization. And that's the advice I would give to any country.
Right. On that note, David, thank you. Thank you so much for this very insightful, very interesting, and very exciting conversation this evening. I absolutely enjoyed it, and I'm sure our viewers would equally, love it. So thank you so much for your time, and I hope to speak to you again sometime soon. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Paul.
You've been listening to Risk Tales, presented by Aggregation.